Hello and welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another video. This one is Game Week 36 player rankings with myself and George from Ingenuity Fantasy, which if you don't know about Ingenuity Fantasy, do check them out. Link is in the description, it's ingenuityfantasy.com. All sorts of good stuff on there. You've got match stats from Opta, you've got articles on differentials, captaincy from various different people. You've got the player rankings, which we'll talk about today, and then you've got the transfer wizard, which is a cool feature. You basically put in what budget you've got, what position you need, and it will give you a ranked list of players to consider. But yeah, player rankings we're going to talk about today. 6 categories. Myself and George will each put a top 10 list for each category. Those categories being budget forwards, premium forwards, budget mids, premium mids, budget defenders, premium defenders. So let's get straight into it.
Hi guys, welcome back to another edition of FPL Player Rankings with myself and Brad. We will get started straight away with the cheap defenders. Weirdly, quite a lot to talk about in the cheap defender section. Starting with Sessegnon. So, I mean, Fulham's fixtures until the end of the season, I mean, you know, they're not great, but you know they're not horrible. I mean, Everton and Brentford is okay, and then you know that City fixture, but you know that will obviously be City with a lot to play for. But yeah, I mean, I think he probably still gets to start in those games, and obviously is quite attacking. But you seem to have lost a bit of faith.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. 4.2 million is very, very good value for someone that is most likely going to be playing out of position as a winger. But we saw Fulham now do have more attackers back. We saw at the weekend he only got 57 minutes. For that reason, they've now got more forwards that they can play. But also, Everton this week, Everton at home, really nice fixture. Apart from that, it's Brentford away, Man City at home, which both teams score goals, like a fair amount of goals. So not only is it kind of a minutes risk, I'm just not sure that you're going to get two. I mean, there's only 3 games left, and I can only see a clean sheet in one of them, to be honest. So if you've got him, then definitely keep for this week. But I'm not sure I'd be looking to buy personally at the moment. Anyway, I'm not as keen on Fulham's fixtures for a defender as maybe some are. I mean, like I say, this week's great, but the next 2 not particularly.
I think we mentioned before, with Sessegnon and where he's playing on the pitch, you're almost not looking at their fixtures just as a defender, you're looking at his fixtures as an attacker as well. And, you know, against Everton at home and Brentford, you know, for an attacker, you definitely wouldn't say those 2 are bad fixtures. But there is definitely, you know, some doubts around minutes and, you know, the fact that Brentford and City both have a decent amount to play for in terms of Europe. So, you know, there is definitely an element of risk attached, but you know, I think the reason he just maintains the top spot for me is the price that you can get all of that for. You know, it's just unbelievable value there. And then, so moving on, I mean, staying on the same team though. So Robinson, whatever that blip that he got dropped for seems to have gone. I mean, he started the last game. I'm pretty sure he's, you know, top 5 in the Prem for assists, albeit he hasn't, you know, been in there for a while. But yeah, I mean, I think Robinson's value going forward, and you know, those 2, especially that Everton fixture, I just think he does have a bit of value here.
Yeah, I mean, again, I do like the Everton fixture. I don't quite know what happened in that Game Week 34 where he just wasn't in the squad. I mean, it must have been injury related, but he's now back and fine. So who knows? But yeah, a similar reasoning, to be honest. I just don't really like the 2 fixtures afterwards. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, completely fair. Now, one that we do have quite a stark difference of opinions on here as well. So Livramento. So, I mean, I've got him low. Almost, you know, I think a bit of me doesn't want to jinx it. But I mean, I'm just not highly enthused by our fixtures or indeed our defence. I mean, Chelsea will just be riding a pretty decent high of beating Liverpool, even though Liverpool had nothing to play for. And then, you know, we go from that straight into the Emirates. So I am just a little bit concerned about what that could mean for Newcastle defensively.
Yeah, see, I don't mind the fixtures as much. I mean, don't get me wrong, Arsenal away in 37, that's not a good fixture for sure, but Chelsea at home and Everton at home. I mean, Chelsea don't look like they're firing on all cylinders going forward by any means, and given that that's at home for Newcastle as well, I don't mind that fixture. I don't think that's a particularly bad fixture, and Everton at home, obviously a good fixture. Newcastle at home is a tough place to go if you're not on goal scoring form. So yeah, I really don't mind them two fixtures.
Yeah. And then, so speaking of a place which, hasn't been hard to go to this season, despite Brad's protests, Wan-Bissaka. Now, Wan-Bissaka is a player who, can definitely be considered for the list, but I just... You seem to have turned around your opinion on West Ham a bit then?
Yeah, it's less West Ham, more the fixtures. Our fixtures are just nice. I mean, you can't... It's kind of a form versus fixtures thing. Yeah. Not that we've had form for a long time, but it's... I mean, Man United away this week should be a very nice fixture, given that they'll put their efforts into the European game. Forest at home in 37, I don't mind that. Forest again, this isn't the same Forest that we were seeing like a month or two ago, where they're like blowing teams apart. Admittedly, that fixture isn't the easiest, and then Ipswich away on the final day. I don't mind it. Wan-Bissaka also gets into ridiculously attacking positions, like very, very attacking positions. People that haven't watched him this season, this is me going to go on a little bit of a rant because I think he's the most underrated fullback going at the moment. People seem to think he's this 1v1 merchant where like defensively he's unbelievable, and he is, but going forward he is so underrated. He has been fantastic this season going forward. It doesn't look good, but it's effective, and I think that if you're going to get a defender from West Ham, which admittedly you might not want to, he is the one to go for. Given he's only 4.4 million, he takes up some silly positions. So yeah, the fixtures and his positioning, I think he could be good value.
Yeah, and I think, we've also seen that reflected in his returns. It's not like these returns have been fluky. I mean, against Newcastle, I remember when we played you, he was a bit of a menace, actually. He was causing us a lot of problems. So, I mean... if you're wondering, if you look at Wan-Bissaka's returns and you're thinking, that's like flash in the pan, he doesn't get forward, definitely not the case. They are warranted returns. So, I do agree it's a great option. I'm just really worried about West Ham's capacity to keep any sort of clean sheet. So that's the only concern for me, really.
Yeah, we're bad.
But then, that moves us on. Another feature you'll see here is, so we've got a couple of Villa players and then Collins, who actually ended up getting a return for Brentford. Now, if you're talking about targeting fixtures, you don't need to look much further than Villa and Brentford. Villa's fixtures are, fantastic, not least because of the scheduling.
Yeah, so to start with, game week 36, Bournemouth, this is going to be contradictory because I've got Bournemouth attackers high on my lists, but Bournemouth haven't been scoring a mountain of goals for a while now. They are somewhat struggling to score goals, so I don't mind that fixture from a defensive standpoint, but also game week 37 and game week 38. So in game week 37, Villa have got Spurs at home. In game week 38, Villa have got Man United away. Two teams that are most likely going to be the teams in the Europa League final. That Europa League final will be between game week 37 and game week 38, which Aston Villa play both of them either side. So obviously Tottenham and Man United have nothing else to play for besides that Europa League final. So you would imagine that they will be rotated teams in those games, which is perfect if you want Aston Villa players.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's that sort of rotation that not only, would help Villa in an attacking sense, but it just means that in terms of potency going forward, Tottenham and Man United are already bad with their first team. You can imagine, getting them teams being even less potent. The chance for even a double clean sheet there is just quite high. So that's why we're both quite hot on the Villa defenders. And then, yeah, so another hot defender, actually. I mean, you mentioned Bournemouth struggles going forward. I mean, this is a man who has actually seemed to be a part of them going forward quite often, and that's Huijsen. Now, it is no secret how many clubs are interested in this man. He's been absolutely unbelievable this season. But what we've seen that, I think comes as a surprise to a lot of people this year is his attacking output just seems to be, really, really high.
Yeah, he's a beast. He's a beast of a man, to be fair. So, like, if you can put the ball in the right area for him, he'll not even out jump, but he'll get to the ball over other players. So he's always going to be a threat. And the thing with these lists now is that they're going to be very, very volatile over the next couple of weeks, given that there's only 3 fixtures left this week. One good fixture is kind of enough to have you in these lists almost, or one really good fixture. And that fixture for Bournemouth is the last day, Leicester at home. A perfect fixture. That's almost the only reason that he's in this list. But because of how little fixtures there are left, you have to look at these single fixtures, really.
Yeah, and what you see from Huijsen, I mean, he's kind of similar to like a Shah in the sense that, he's a beast in and around the box, and he's a big target, but also he's really, really good at bringing the ball forward and playing line-breaking passes. He's always looking to do that, which in the FPL sense means that he has as much chance as a sort of midfielder does to just play one of those through balls. And if there's one thing Bournemouth aren't short of, it's attackers who can put the ball in the goal. So Huijsen's situation, both defensively, particularly because of that Leicester setup, and in the attacking sense, are just great. So yeah, Huijsen is definitely a great option. And I think the final cheap defender that we wanted to discuss is one that I know quite a few people have. I mean, Brad mentioned he had him, but a lot of people are umming and ahhing over him, and that's Kivior. So you've got to think, it's hard to know if he'll be rotated out. A lot of it might depend on the result this evening against PSG. So you've got to imagine that if Arsenal make it into the Champions League final, they're going to rest some players in the Prem for that. But either way, it's hard to say because they're a great defence, but their fixtures are bad. So Kivior's a bit of a conundrum in that sense.
Yeah, there's so many different kind of narratives around that you can build around Arsenal, in that their fixtures may be bad on the face of it, but Liverpool looked pretty terrible against Chelsea, so maybe that's not such a bad fixture. Obviously, on the last day at Southampton away, great fixture. And actually, the Champions League final, I believe it's not that close to Game Week 38. So I don't think that rotation around Game Week 38 is too much of a worry. If anything, they might want to play their best team to kind of keep that going as such. Who knows, to be honest. But I don't... Yeah, Newcastle at home in Game Week 37 isn't ideal, but I'm not sure that Liverpool away is that bad. And again, we've got to at some point look at single fixtures, and Southampton away on the final day is pretty good. So, and he's cheap.
Yeah, and also he did actually chip in with a return the other day. So just add that into the mix to confuse managers even more, and you've got quite the dilemma. And then I think that moves us on to another even bigger dilemma, and that is what to do about Trent. Now, there's kind of 2 different schools of thought that people seem to have on Trent. A lot of people think, now that Madrid deal's in place, and with Madrid wanting him released early so he can play in the Club World Cup, a lot of people seem to think he won't get any more games for Liverpool. But then there is also the school of thought where this is his last chance ever to play in a Liverpool shirt in an actual proper match. Do they want to give him the send off that they think he deserves? So, and let him play those games and let him give one final goodbye to the fans. Where do you land on it? We both have him quite high, but I would definitely say to exercise caution on that front.
If you've got a strong opinion on it, then go with that, because I'm not sure there's any evidence to particularly state either way. The only thing that I'd be worried about more so is that I don't think Liverpool are going to be that great in these last 3 games. So even if he does think even if you do think he gets great minutes, I'm not sure he's like the option that he would have been a month or so ago anyway. So the fixtures aren't incredible minutes are a risk, and I'm not sure Liverpool are going to be firing on all cylinders. So if you don't have him, I'm not really sure that it's worth it.
Yeah. And I think what you'll see, a feature on particularly the premium defenders here, is outside of Gvardiol, everyone is either on a team that's not playing that great or they don't have great fixtures. So Trent is kind of almost second by default because, you know, if you get onto other players like, well, I mean, one that kind of splits opinion here is Munoz. Now, Munoz we've seen be an absolutely fantastic option earlier in the season. But, I mean, Palace just throw in a bit more inconsistency and you're just never sure where to land on them. But the reason I do have him high is because we know he has that capacity, and I think those Tottenham and Wolves fixtures back to back are just pretty good value.
Yeah, he's maybe a little bit low for me in all fairness. I do have him in my own team and I have no kind of thoughts of getting rid of him or anything like that. So potentially he is a little bit low for me, but like you say, Palace are either really good or really bad. Like the game against Aston Villa in the FA Cup, whenever that was a few weeks back, they were incredible in that game, like absolutely unbelievable. But then the game before, or a couple of games before, they were really bad. So you're not really sure what Palace you're going to get. Either way, like you say, Munoz is kind of ridiculously attacking, as we know. So yeah, I think if you've got him, I don't really see a reason to sell him.
Yeah. Exactly, and I think that's, you know, in the Premier League in the lead up to those games, you know, you've had City and Newcastle both put 5 past them, then they didn't even score against Bournemouth, and then, you know, they had a pretty stale 1-1 draw with Forest. But then, as you say, in the FA Cup, they were unbelievable. So I think their league form has been uninspiring, to say the least. So I think that's why, you know, I'm not maybe as hot on Munoz as I would have been, but I mean, these are the sort of fixtures, you know, the Tottenham and Wolves fixtures where they could just turn it around and, you know, he could get returned. So I don't think he's a bad option there at all. I mean, we also spoke about Kivior. So is Saliba kind of subject to the same sort of, you know, the same sort of pitfalls that Kivior is, in that, you know, their fixtures aren't exactly fantastic, and I think Saliba just hasn't seemed to have materialised into the same set-piece threat that we thought he would fill when Gabriel went down.
Yeah, I think his ceiling's always pretty low, really, in any game. I mean, obviously anybody can pop out with a goal, but he doesn't look one of the more dangerous centre-backs. So, yeah, that's for me why he's low. There's kind of... And he's just a bit too expensive, really. I don't think that 6.6 million, when you can get Kiwior, who... Yeah, probably won't get dissimilar minutes, I don't think. I'm just not sure that he's worth 6.6 million at this point.
Yeah, completely agree. And now I think the final talking point that we want to touch on is Ait-Nouri. Now, Ait-Nouri has been like a yo-yo up and down, you know, the cheap defenders and the premium defenders lists. But what we found is he's quite easy to predict, as Wolves have been. Wolves have been an absolute dream from an FPL standpoint, because when they're playing bad teams, they return. When they're playing good teams, they don't. But this is one of the points in the season where we actually don't know, because, you know, their upcoming fixtures are Brighton at home, and then Palace, and then Brentford at home. Now, those are 3 of the trickier fixtures to predict. So Ait-Nouri in those 3 fixtures is a bit of a dice roll, really. But I think I quite like him just because of the positions he occupies.
Yeah, he's always pretty attacking, of course, and we know that. So I don't think you can ever write him off and say he's a bad pick, because in any given game he can get pretty far forward. I'm just not that keen on those fixtures. I mean, Brighton this week, Brighton are such a hard team to predict, to be honest. You don't know what you're going to get from him in any given week. But game week 37 and game week 38 is Palace and Brentford, 2 teams that are very much capable of scoring goals. So that's the only reason that I haven't got him on my list, and I'm not that hot on him.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that Ait-Nouri is here is, you know, there's every chance that Wolves get packed for like 3, you know, in each of those games. But then there is also every chance that they could, you know, bag a couple as well. So, I mean, in terms of Ait-Nouri over those next 3 fixtures, I think there is quite a high ceiling, potentially, not least because of where he plays. Then also the floor is quite low because he could easily get minus points from teams putting multiple past them. So yeah, just if you do want to take that dice roll, just know the floor is also quite low. So yeah, that rounds out the defenders section. Let us know what you think of our list. Let us know if there's anyone we missed, and we will see you again for the midfielders. Right, welcome back to the midfielder segment. We will get started straight away with the cheap midfielders. Again, quite a contentious episode, this one. There's another sort of stark difference that me and Brad have, and that is the prospect of Trossard. We were briefly having this out off camera, but decided it was too good content to not have on camera. Brad seems to still doubt his minutes, despite him getting 5 starts in a row, for 90 minutes, and having 4 goals. So
yeah.
You think it's due a rest, is that right?
Well, anybody that's played loads of minutes is always due a rest. That's the easiest argument going. But no, I mean, the minutes are good, but I just don't know. I don't know if he is that first choice striker, to be honest. I mean, I still think it's Marino personally. Maybe we will see. I mean, we're recording this before the Arsenal PSG game, so maybe we'll get an insight into that on those lineups. But I'm just not sure that he is the first choice guy. I'm not sure that he does get all the minutes. Even if he does get all the minutes, it's all the minutes against Liverpool, it's all the minutes against Newcastle, potentially Southampton as well, obviously. But it's not like the fixtures are unbelievable. So even if he does get all the minutes, I'm not sure he's like an unbelievable player, well, an unbelievable FPL asset. So that's why he's nowhere near for me.
Yeah, and it's completely fair. I think we do have to factor in the fact he's been playing well, and the fact he has got returns. It's like if he'd only had like 1 goal in his last 5 games, or 1 assist, and he hadn't done a huge amount, then I would understand it. But even in the Premier League and in the Champions League, he's been in dangerous positions and he has been scoring. And when you're Arsenal at the moment, and you suffer from not having a proper number 9, I think any shred of an opportunity that someone looks dangerous, they just are a lot harder to drop.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's just it's not that he's like a must start, or he won't get rotated. He's just hard to drop right now, and I think that's the main issue that I have, at least with not having him.
Yeah, and that's fair. To be, he has been very good. I mean, he's obviously been getting returns, so yeah, I do see that. But again, even if that is the case, he could still then play against PSG and then be rested. So
yeah,
who knows
exactly.
with Arsenal at the moment? It's up in the air, to be honest.
Yeah, no, for sure. There is always that risk there. Now, also another week and another day where Brad has still got Kluivert and Semenyo at the top of his list. Now, I think for me, an area of concern that has now also crept in. So, not least Bournemouth's form. I mean, they did get a great win. I think what was slightly concerning for me is the benching. So, Semenyo did get benched, and Kluivert, doesn't seem to be able to complete full 90s. So I think now there is just that added concern about the minutes.
Yeah, well, Semenyo still came on and got a return, so...
Yeah.
No, but yeah, in all fairness, that was worry. I don't really get why that happened. I mean, Semenyo's basically played all the minutes ever this season, so not really sure where that came from. Maybe that's why. But yeah, I can't see that being a thing, to be honest. I mean, and as we mentioned, fixtures wise, if you've got one really good fixture in this last 3 game week period, then you're going to be high up these lists because there's only 3 fixtures. And Leicester at home in game week 38. Admittedly, it's pinning a lot on that fixture because the other 2 are City and Villa. But I just think that a lot of people come game week 38 will wish they had Bournemouth players or be buying them, personally.
Yeah, completely agree. Now, I think now we get on to quite a momentous moment. So, from the man who brought you Beto before he was cool, Brad, so we actually recorded last episode, I think mid Brentford game, and while discussing how great an asset Sharda could be to the end of season, he scored. Now, not only did he score, he then followed it up with a brace on the weekend. Now, it was, I mean, credit where credit's due for Brad. He was talking about how, great an option he could be, and 3 returns since we last spoke about him. Fantastic.
Yeah, given that he, in the previous, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, in the previous 8 games, he hadn't got a return. But, yeah, it was mainly the Man United at home fixture. Well, not even just the Man United at home fixture, but Man United at home in game week 35, then Ipswich, Fulham, Wolves. You can't ignore those fixtures. And that Man United at home fixture was such an opportunity, I think. That's why Mbeumo, so many people bought Mbeumo. That's why so many people bought Wissa. And that's why I thought Sharda was a good option. And yeah, he managed to get 14 points. So if you did bring him in, then well done. I didn't.
Yeah, and so I think Sharda was probably just waiting for you to discuss him on this show before he started returning.
Yeah,
so completely understandable. Now, is there a bit of concern moving forward? So, I mean, we've spoken about Brentford's pie pretty much only being 2 players big in terms of Wissa and Mbeumo. Does Sharda's sort of emergence in recent weeks, particularly in those dangerous areas, if you're a Mbeumo or Wissa owner, are you slightly concerned?
No, not for me. I think that the fixtures, I think Brentford are good enough to score multiple goals in all 3 of these last fixtures. So I think that the pie is big enough for all 3 of them to get involved.
Yeah, completely agree. Now, another interesting point, I mean, it probably should have been discussed when we're talking about Trossard, actually, but, another sort of great cheap option who finds himself in those dangerous areas is Merino. Now, I mean, we mentioned what you think about Trossard, but I think him and Merino are in, sort of direct competition, if you will, for a lot of those minutes. Now, what do you think happens with Merino over these next couple of games? Is he someone you would, I mean, if you have him, is he a sell?
I do have him, so I am in that position. I am not selling him mainly because he's cheap, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I don't think that you particularly need to sell him. There's other players that you can probably sell and hit. Like last week he was on my bench. This week he'll be on my bench. The following week he'll probably be on my bench. The same as potentially Kiwior, because they're just cheap enough to do that. And I'm essentially holding out for that Southampton away game in game week 38 more than anything. If by that point it looks like he won't play in that striker role because Trossard is doing all good things and getting all the minutes, then so be it. But I just don't think that I think he's cheap enough that you can just ride him on the bench basically.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then there's one take I'll probably have to defend now, and that is Garnacho. Now, granted, United will likely have a lot of focus on the Europa League. I do just think now Garnacho is pretty much, he's nailed down his starting spot. And, he did have a goal and an assist in that Brentford game, and he did look electric. He has had some pretty high XG over the last couple of games. In his last 3 games, he's had 0.43, 0.95, and 0.54. And I know, they are against the likes of Wolves and a faltering Bournemouth side, but I think they just are quite good underlying numbers for an attacking player, and he is very cheap,
Yeah, I mean, and West Ham at home is a similarly great fixture, exactly. Of course, but the fact that his numbers have been so good, he's been playing so well, almost to me means rest him because you need him in the important games. I don't know, but I've 1, United are bad. 2, I think you could quite easily not play in quite a few of these games. If we knew he was going to get minutes and all of the United's first team would be around as well, then maybe he'd be an option. But for me, there's too many reasons against him, I think.
Yeah, completely fair. Now, another one that's caused quite a lot of tension. I did go through the pain of owning him during his downtime, but that's Enzo. Now Enzo, I mean, what you mentioned before, he hasn't seemed to have changed his style or positions. I think it's just the returns that fluctuated, and now we just seem to be in another one of those patches where, the returns do seem to be there. Would you ever consider bringing him in?
If you really needed someone cheap, then yeah, I think there's other better options at the moment that are slightly more expensive. I mean, if you've got the choice, you'd spend 0.4 million on Sharda, I think. But yeah, Enzo was a weird one. I never owned Enzo, but the people that brought him in a long time ago, I got asked loads of questions like, oh, who should I buy for Enzo? Should I do this? Should I do that? I don't really get why people wanted to sell Enzo or just bench him every week. I mean, I get the benching because he's 4.7 million. He's quite easy to bench. But for me, I never really understood selling him. He started taking up these unbelievable positions. He's then continued to do that. Yes, the returns haven't been there, but the underlying numbers have been pretty good consistently. So I think I don't think he was ever a sell. So I don't think it's particularly surprising that he's now getting returns either. And for 4.7 million, like I say, as a fifth midfielder, he's ideal. If you've got him, then you keep. If you don't, then I do think Sharda's a better option.
Yeah. I mean, I find myself in complete agreement with that, to be honest. And so that leads us on to the premium midfielders. Now, I would like to just quickly knight Mbeumo. I mean, considering I think he's the second highest scorer in FPL this season, the fact he hasn't touched one is only indicative of the crazy season that Salah's been having. But, with the league wrapped up now, you can expect Salah to get rotated and rested a lot more. And, I mean, Brentford, putting 4 past United, their attack is absolutely flying. There is nothing not to love about Mbeumo.
Yeah, he's got everything you want from... There is actually no bad thing about him at the moment. Not only does he get all of the minutes available, he's on penalties. The team he's playing for are scoring a lot of goals right now, and he's got really good fixtures. There's nothing not to like about him. Most people have brought him in, obviously, last week. Didn't get rewarded as much as they maybe wanted to, especially given a lot captained him, but I've still got my triple captain left, and I am very tempted to use it on Mbeumo this week. Yeah,
I mean, it's hard to argue with it. Very unlucky to only return once in a game where Brentford have scored 4 as well. So, yeah, I mean, do not overthink getting Mbeumo in. There is absolutely no reason not to have him in if you don't already, and it is not too late. There is no bad entry point until the end of the season. So, yeah, just go for it. Now, another one that is, we mentioned Garnacho, but I think one man who just will play every single minute of every single game, whether you like him or not, Bruno Fernandes is probably inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic footballer. Maybe one of the only ones. Footballer. Maybe one of the only ones out of that club. But yeah, ridiculously good footballer. He's absolutely carried United for a while now. But yeah, I'm just not 100% sure on his minutes. The same with any United player, really. Well, the good ones. I'm just not particularly sure on his minutes. If he does get good minutes, though, obviously it's a good fixture this week with West Ham at home. The problem is, even if he does get good minutes, then he's probably going to be playing with a bunch of kids. Now, don't get me wrong, that won't stop him. I mean, he's been playing with quite rubbish players all season, and it hasn't stopped him. So I don't hate him as an option. I just think that given the uncertainty on minutes, I think there's better options. Yeah,
completely fair. And then, so another one that a lot of people seem to have him captain as well, which, completely understand it, and congrats if you did, but KDB. Now, he seems to have secured the lion's share of the minutes, probably until the end of the season. And, we mentioned before, City have pretty good fixtures. KDB, definitely, solid consideration till the end of the season.
Yeah, 100%. I think he probably does get good minutes now for these last 3 games. It just makes sense for him to get the bulk of these minutes. This week, it's Southampton away. I mean, if you have him, I think he is a completely viable captain option this week. And actually, if you still get your triple captain left and you do have De Bruyne, I wouldn't go against using it on De Bruyne this week. Maybe you might need like a leak to confirm that he's starting and to feel comfortable doing it. But yeah, great option.
Yeah, and I think it's as you say, like Southampton are literally lunch money, and fixtures don't get better than that. So yeah, another one not to overthink. Now, a transfer that a few people have overthought before, including Brad. But then, I think my phone must have been broken because I saw Bowen in Brad's team. Now, is this a belief in West Ham, or is this purely in fixtures, or is this more Bowen oriented?
Yeah, it's solely fixtures. I mean, we touched on them with Wan-Bissaka. It's a rotated Man United away, then it's Forest at home, which is okay. Then it's Ipswich away, and if we're ever going to do anything good in a game of football, it will be because of Jarrod Bowen, and he will be involved in the goal. If we're lucky enough to get a goal, then he will be part of it. So yeah, it's just the fixtures are too good, and everything goes through him. Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty simple inclusion. It's not a complicated pick. There's not too much nuance about it. They just have good fixtures and it's a good player, but they're a bad team. So that's what you're weighing up. Yeah.
And then I think that some of the Liverpool options are, fairly interesting. I think, some people have had Luis Diaz, and Luis Diaz has got a crazy amount of returns this season. But I just think with the league wrapped up now, you will see a lot more of Gakpo and Jota. So I think if there ever was a time you can concretely say that, Diaz will be subject to rotation, it is now. I think, they definitely try and get Jota some games in. They definitely try and get Gakpo a lot of games in. Maybe even Darwin some games in if they're looking to sell him in the summer. So I think you can expect, if you do have Diaz, absolutely now is the time to move on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Diaz has been great for anybody that has held him. But yeah, the minutes look as ropey as they have looked. Didn't get any minutes against Chelsea, so yeah, he's a sell.
Yeah, completely agree. So that rounds out the midfielder segment. Let us know what you think of our list. Let us know if there's anyone we missed, and we will see you again for the forwards. Right, welcome back to the forward segment. We'll get started straight away with the cheap forwards. Not a huge amount to discuss this week on the cheap forward front. I mean, Wisser and Evan Nilsson still, keeping their spots up there. One outside shout I do want to talk about is if you do worship fixtures, I don't think Delap is that bad a shout, personally. I mean, he's whatever blip it was where he's got dropped, seems to have been corrected. He's back in the squad. But Brentford at home, and then Leicester, and then West Ham at home are pretty tasty. And, he's got 14 returns this season, Delap. I think with those fixtures, I don't see a reason he couldn't get a couple goals across those three.
Yeah, honestly, if any team, any of the teams that aren't in the relegation zone, if any other team had those three fixtures, their players would be at the top of our lists, admittedly.
Yeah.
Like, even if the likes of Wolves had those fixtures, you'd see Strand Larsen pretty high. So,
yeah,
I get it. I am not sold on, quite clearly not sold on Ipswich, nobody is, but I'm also not sold on his minutes. In the last 4 games, so he did get those 2 bench-ins, which there must have been something behind that I'm just not aware of.
Yep.
Like, maybe Ipswich fans know, because it completely baffled me. They weren't even relegated at that point. So anyway, he got 2 bench-ins. Then the last 2 games he started, he got 70 minutes and then 67 minutes. So even when he starts, he's not getting 90s. If they score, admittedly, it probably is going through him. So I don't hate it given the fixtures, but his minutes worry me.
Yeah, I mean, fair. I just think, if you are a fixture chaser, and you do need someone in that price range, and there does happen to be a striker that you need to make it all fit, I don't think he's that bad an option given those fixtures. I guess a part of why it makes it tricky is because there is another man in that price range who we have liked all season. Now, granted, he is suspended for 1 more game, But with João Pedro, do you think he just slots straight back into that Brighton lineup? How do you think it works with him and Welbeck?
Yeah, I do. I don't know where he slots in, but I do think he does slot in. I've got him at 9 in my list. He is still suspended for game week 36, so don't buy him this week. Meaning that him with 2 fixtures, I'm putting above a fair amount of strikers with 3 fixtures. But the pool is just really limited in budget forwards. Yeah. And to be honest, even when he does come back, it's Liverpool at home as the first game. So it's Tottenham away as the last game. But yeah, fixtures are okay. It's more just lack of other options, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. And Strand Larsen, even though he's been getting quite a few returns recently, he has got a knock, so we also don't know what his minutes will be like there. But yeah, I mean, as you say, beyond Wisser and Evan Nilsson, it's pretty uninspiring across the board. Which, however, does move us on to, stark contrast how inspiring the premium forwards are at the moment. I think a good place to start is the return of Haaland. Now, if City had nothing to play for, or they were, they'd already wrapped things up, then I think you wouldn't see Haaland rush back. But I think given they are right in the thick of a Champions League race, I think it's probably quite likely we see Haaland coming straight back in and getting the lion's share of those minutes.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily that sure that he starts this week, but I don't particularly think that matters. Even if he gets a sub appearance this week and then 2 starts, I still think he's top of the list. I mean, in the previous game against Wolves, he was on the bench. I don't think at any point he went to warm up, so I don't think there was ever any intention of him getting minutes. But yeah, maybe he gets a sub appearance this week, then 2 starts. That's plenty to have him high in this list.
Yeah. So what do you think that does for Marmoush's minutes? Because I know quite a few people still own Marmoush. Would this make you move off Marmoush to someone else?
I mean, this week it's tough. We may get like a leak which will say whether Haaland starts or Marmoush starts or what have you. So that will be quite useful for this week especially. But we don't want to forget that before Haaland got injured, they were both playing. It's not one or the other. It's not a case of Marmoush doesn't play if Haaland plays. So the only real thing is Marmoush has been playing pretty badly more than anything. He's not been great. So that would be the main concern for me around his minutes. But if we do know he starts this week, then yeah, you can't sell him particularly. You can sell him next week, but not this week, I don't think.
I think it's just really hard to sell into those fixtures. Do you know what I mean? Selling anyone from a team who's going to start into those fixtures just feels right. I just feel like there's transfers better spent elsewhere in your team.
Yeah.
And then, another great option. We spoke earlier about Villa. Especially with the Europa League final, Villa potentially have the best fixtures till the end of the season. And with Rashford out for the rest of the year, Ollie Watkins is, right in contention.
Yeah, the fixtures we talked about before could be really, really nice. And actually, if you do have money in the bank, I hadn't considered this before this conversation right now, but if you do have money in the bank and you find out Marmoush isn't starting, if you can afford to go to Watkins, that's really nice. And actually, I can afford that. So that is now something I'm going to be thinking about, because I always thought I'd have to go to Chris Wood, who we'll get onto. But Watkins is definitely a viable option with those fixtures.
Yeah, I can see a little light bulb.
It did.
So I think, that actually leads us on to the subject of Wood and Mateta. Now, Wood does have excellent fixtures till the end of the season. Forest faltering a bit, though. So, that could further influence your decision to move to Watkins.
Yeah, they haven't been the best, to be honest. Villa have been pretty good recently. Yeah, Forest not so much, but Leicester at home and West Ham away is really nice. Really nice.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you are in the market for a forward this week, and you can probably exclude the likes of Haaland and Isak if you're moving from someone cheaper, then Wood is a very, very good option along with Watkins.
Yeah. So where does that? Because I know you mentioned before, a lot of people, and I imagine a lot of people in the FPL space, are having a bit of debates about what to do with Mateta. Now, I think, given these next two fixtures that are coming up, I don't see. It's not a huge amount of urgency, but you mentioned a lot of people seem to be stuck in this conundrum about what to do with Mateta.
Yeah, I get it. He's had this time where he was getting really random amount of minutes. Palace, he didn't get a return the other day. I do get it, and there is some kind of uncertainty given that the FA Cup final for Palace will be, I'm pretty sure it's in between game week 36 and game week 37. It's nowhere near game week 36 though, so I don't think game week 36 is a worry. You can hold him this week for sure. The FA Cup final's 6 days after game week 36, but the game week 37 is pretty close after the final. That's when you may need to worry about it. But this week, Tottenham away is a really good fixture this week, so I wouldn't be selling him this week.
He does now seem to be off pens as well.
Yeah.
So is that is another element of concern. And I think, as we've been mentioning here, you're talking about how good an option Watkins is, talking about how good an option Wood is. It does make it a slightly more difficult conversation.
It does, yeah, and that is a fair point. Penalties are a massive plus for forwards, and I agree that does make him a worse player or worse FPL asset. Sorry, but I still think that the fixture's too good this week to sell him personally. Yeah. I think that's what it boils down to. Unless you've got a lot of transfers or a decent amount of money, and you can move to a Watkins and the rest of your team is already sorted. Moving on from Mateta to a Watkins, for example, would only be a luxury option. So, if you've got transfers and if you've got money to do so. But I definitely think, given his fixtures, there shouldn't be any urgency, to move off of him. So yeah, that rounds out the end of the forwards and indeed the end of this week's player rankings. Let us know what you think of our lists. Let us know if there's anyone we missed, and we will see you again next week. And that is all for this one. Do check out ingenuityfantasy.com. The link is in the description. Do like, do subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.